So, welcome everybody to our celebration of reflecting ourselves and particularly to the artists who are present. My name's Gosling, also known as Ju90, and I'm the artistic director of Together 2012. I'm a white woman with pale olive skin and green eyes behind black plastic glasses, and I'm wearing a grey trilby over crop-tenured hair. I've got a grey silk scarf around my neck, and I'm wearing a hand-knitted jersey in shades of black, pink, turquoise, and grey in sort of various different geometric patterns. It's hand knitted. So I don't know quite how much better to describe it. As usual, we have British Sign Language interpretation and live captions available. Please click on the CC button to view the captions, or if you prefer a transcript, the link is in the chat. To access British Sign Language interpretation, click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and follow the instructions there. And if you can't see the globe, look under the More menu, which has three dots. You have to click on, once you go through that, you'll have to click on the British Sign Language to get started. But once activated, the British Sign Language window will appear and you can move the window around your screen, resize it and pin it as you wish. This is a new feature that we hope will increase the visibility of the interpreter during screen sharing. The recording, which we will make available afterwards, will, as usual, have the interpreter shown throughout to everyone. There are 50 images in the exhibition from artists at every stage in their career and across a wide range of media. More disabled women are represented here than have ever been seen in an exhibition before. I'd like to start by thanking everyone who submitted work for the exhibition, and particularly to those who created work especially for it, as well as to Arts Council England for funding it. As it's a big show, everyone is invited to make points and ask questions in the chat, and I'll read this towards the end. If you're an exhibiting artist, we also invite you to put your social media details into the chat so that other people can look at your work. And you should also be able to send messages. So I'm going to move on now and start the screen share. And this is what you see when you open the exhibition webpage. I just wanted to start with that so that you could see what's there. I'd also like to point out the what's effectively a trigger warning, which is please be aware that in addition to pride and joy, resistance and resilience, this exhibition includes the portrayal of nudity, bodily organs, and distress. So if you're feeling that any of those things might upset you tonight, then you might prefer to watch the recording where you can fast forward past any of that. And we have a list of all of the exhibiting artists right at the start too. So I'm going to come on to our first work by Francesca Apicella, Phantasmagoria, which is actually looks very, very digital, but is oil on wood. And just to give you a little bit of audio description, two identical women with patterned faces, one eye surrounded by green, the other by purple, showing half of their faces joined by their red hair on an op art inspired black and white background. Thank you very much to Nina Colson, who can't be here tonight due to illness, for writing all of the outtag brief descriptions for us. If anybody would like an audio described tour, then we can organise that with Nina once she's back. So please just drop us a line and we can do individual audio described tours. I like the op art. It reminds me, I don't know if anybody's been watching the Winter Paralympics, which is still on at the moment, but they had an op art inspired section of the opening, which I think could only happen in Italy. I put this first because I really felt that it echoed the theme of the exhibition. You know, it's literally a reflection of the artist. And this one is by Rosie Burnout from her Dissimulation project. It's actually 2026. It's a multicolored image of a woman with long hair, duplicated with detail of thorn and roses below the portrait. One of the things that I really like about these first two pictures is it sort of underlines a theory that I've always had about disability art, which is around colour palettes. The Western, some of you, or most of you probably know better than I do, but the Western coloured palettes, the tradition is always kind of sludgy greens, browns, and greys, which I think has an awful lot to do with the fact that colour blindness is so prevalent amongst men, but not by women. So traditionally, bright colours are seen as feminine and exotic and, not really proper art. But I always feel that we don't care as the disability arts movement about the other ideas that underline that. The idea that the body and mind is separate, the mind has to oppress the body. We really celebrate the kind of the free body and the free mind roaming wherever it wants to. And I think that really comes out in a lot of the colours in this exhibition. It is a really colourful celebration. And indeed, moving on, this is by a young artist, Eve Smith, whose primary art form is actually performance. And this is from 2022, so obviously when she was 4 years younger. And again, I love the colours, and I really so, with the description, it's just a photograph of a young woman wearing glasses with headphones and a fleece jacket sitting in front of a pink curtain. And that pink has thrown the pink colour, the sunlight through the curtain has thrown pink over everything else. I just think it works really, really well. And it shows that you can, and I would encourage everybody to do so, you can take selfies at any point and they can be very, very powerful. Now, this is by Deborah Caulfield. I'm just going to, and it's called Sudden Scary Thought, and it's mixed medium with thread. So the last two images that we saw were digital images. They were created, to be seen on screen, if you like. The other images in this exhibition are digital reproductions of something, yeah, something tangible, something physical, but they become different as well. What I like about the digitization of these images is that actually, in a way, you can see them closer up, so that with any of our images in the exhibition, you can just click on them to get them in more detail, and then you can click again. Now, we can't get that close, certainly not if you're a wheelchair user like me, in a standard exhibition. So oh, there we go. So I think that's a real kind of plus of seeing it on screen. Now we have Ali's Latter, The World, the Flesh, and the Breath. And that's a portrait of a woman holding her hand to her mouth and onto her head, overlaid with expressive brush lines in blue and red. Some of you may remember that Ali had a whole exhibition with us back in 2020 around the very important subject of eating disorders. So it's been great to see Ali's picture here. I just realised, apologies, that I was so busy making other points about Deborah's piece that I didn't do the audio description, which is a vibrant image in multicolours, a woman with lines and stars wiggling, emitting from the top of the head to show intensity of thought. And so this is another, if you like, digitization of an image that was originally painted. So this is Anna Lee's oil painting, Purple 89. And I love it. It's something I can really relate to. It's an image it's a portrait of a woman shown in the mirror on a bus or possibly a tube, encountering a situation where they're unable to access in their wheelchair due to a man, dog, and child taking up the room. And the image also focuses on the other empty seats and the hand hook that is not accessible due to its height. And you can just see Anna's feet on her foot plates. So it's an image that I really recognize myself. You're sitting in your chair, you're looking in your mirror, and you can see your feet. And I love the colours. So I'm just going to double click on this. And again, you can see that close up. I can see there's lots of love coming up there in terms of, so yes, please do use the reactions. So moving on, this is Linda Gray. And I would say it's a more conventional self-portrait, but I don't think that's true at all. It's a pencil drawing of a woman rendered in black, white, and green with detail of flowers in monochrome collaged underneath. And again, it's another 2026 self-portrait. So it's been fantastic to see so many new pictures. This is Anne Tehan, a charcoal drawing of a woman wearing glasses and a coat looking up. I really love the thoughtfulness. It doesn't have a title, but I think it says an awful lot. And yeah, again, I can see more love coming up. This is Lorna Bryson's untitled self-portrait. It's 2020, it's from 2023, soft pastels and pastel pencils. And it's a drawn portrait of a woman's face and hair coming out from a black background. The left of the face is in shadow, and the woman looks at the viewer with piercing blue eyes. And this is another painting. It's 2026, acrylics on canvas, Louise Sellers, Stuck in the Sand. It's a painted portrait of a woman in red jumper and curly blonde hair on a beach with the sand, sea, and sky behind her. And of course, what I love about this is the title says it all. You're in your wheelchair stuck in the sand, or that's at least how it comes across to me. And I think, we don't think about often, I think often people don't realize how the environment affects us differently as disabled women and what an intense relationship we have with it, whether we're neurodiverse, whether we've got mental health difficulties, whether we have physical impairments. There's always a more intense relationship with the environment. And speaking of intense, this is Diana Hamilton's Pain is in the Eye of the Beholder 2023 pastel on black paper, which is an expressive drawing detailing the artist's eye in black, white, browns, and purples. I love the way this really stares. We get so stared at as disabled women, and particularly in this day and age, I just love the staring back. And I can see from the reactions that so do lots of other people. This is Ellie Taylor. It's a monochrome painted portrait of a woman in a shirt with long hair loosely tied back, looking down. It's from 2021 and it's acrylic on canvas. And yeah, I think there's so much in this, but I encourage you to come back and look at them for yourselves. And then this is from Melissa, which is a self-portrait with stars 2022 pencil on paper. And Melissa's a young artist with learning difficulties. I love the way that the stars are just so three-dimensional in this. And again, I can see that you like it too. This is Barbara Hume. And it's a watercolor portrait of a woman with pink hair and red lipstick, screaming, her mouth wrapped in barbed wire, holding a red human heart in her hands outstretched in front of her. And it's called Broken Heart Breakdown from 2024. I don't think it needs me to tell you this is an incredibly powerful piece. And I think it expresses all sorts of feelings that many of us can relate to having had at some point in our lives. And then Cherry Lawrence, this is a montage of 6 drawn self-portraits placed around a central wire figure, which is placed against a black curtain. I love the way that the body has been fragmented in this and yet still is holding together in the wire figure in the centre. It's chicken wire sculpture and wax pastels drawings. And this is another piece about, if you like, the fragmented self, which is Zilla Bosworth Coleman's Self Facets, which is cork, ink, and pen on paper from 2025. It's a black ink and coloured pastel expressive drawing of 3 women in a room The central figure is a woman reading a book. To the left of her, a woman sits facing the reader as though in discussion. To the right, the third woman stands with her hands on her hips, as though posing, looking over her shoulder towards the other two. Um, Zilla is a member of the Together 2012 Pop-Up Poetry Club. And yes, it's great to see this. Now, this I find just so interesting. It's Liberty Bly's Lopperfly from 2025, and it's a bone china lithophane, which is on a circular disc. One of the things that one of the many things I find so interesting and exciting about this show is the range of different media that women have used. And you've already seen the different kinds of painting and so on. I went back, once we'd got the show open, I went back to look at some of the online representations of previous self-portrait exhibitions. And what really struck me was how narrow the range was. Everything was very, very traditional. So to see Liberties, I think Nina describes it as a painted nude woman on ceramic plate. Her figure has the wings of a butterfly. Um, yeah, I just think I've never come across anything like it before. Forgive me, Liberty, if you're with us, but I just think it's fabulous. And now we move on to, I think, more montage. So again, sort of different types of representation. So this is Rene Wallens in the space of 4 years, which is created in 2026, and it's some acrylic paint on canvas from 2022, updated digitally 2026. And Nina says two painted self-portraits, one dated 2022 with the words lost identity, wanting to be 20 again, no clear vision, and the other from 2026, digitally montaged with imageries of art supplies, tarot, a journal, fancy cake, and Siamese cat, around which are descriptive words. I won't go and read all of them, but it's friend, mother, artist, dreamer, daughter, and finishes with Baker. And that's the first of the pictures that we have here with, if you like, text inside it. And again, I can see plenty of love coming up for that. So moving on to Caroline Mauer's Self Needs Support, another 2026 piece. And Nina says, and I forgive me, any artist who, if you'd like your out tags updated, please let me know, because clearly you know more than we do. But it's montage of a garden in which sits a woman with short hair, wearing glasses. She sits in a wheelchair, and part of her figure is hand drawn with the face, chair, and arm collage from photographs. Standing behind her on a stone staircase are six women. Next to the steps on the left is a pillar and a curtain, as though from a stages to the right, between which is a screen showing a Zoom meeting. I think this is, I'm just going to click on it and make it bigger so you can begin to see. There's just so much in this collage. So again, I really encourage you to have a look at close up for yourself. And here is another beautiful collage from Jemima Hughes. And it's a map of me inspired by Grayson Perry from 2016. It's hand painted and printed paper. Jemima is a wonderful animator as well. And I think this really reflects that. Nina says a map with painted and collage elements. In the centre of the image is the TARDIS, which is surrounded by a plethora of collaged images and the words creative, determined, imagination, stop motion, adventurous, deaf, disabled, interested, fun, animation, travel, and filmmaking written in bold red text. I mean, yeah, it's just absolutely stunning. So I do hope you've managed to get the sign language interpretation working, Jemima. And moving on, this is another collage, and it's from Joe Walsh. It's called Diagnosed, Not Defined. And I'm going to make that bigger. And then I'm going to click in again so you can actually see some of the detail. While I just read Nina's description, it's the collage of a woman's face with blonde hair and blue eyes, delicately cut and pasted from small pieces of printed medical text, coloured in coloured pencil. In the background is a monochromed printed series of affirmations. And I can just see here, I am enough. I love myself. Again, I think it's a piece that both loses and gains from being digital. Of course, we can't see the texture, but we can get much, much closer up to it and we can really peer at the detail. And I just think it's so clever and so imaginative. And it's just been so wonderful to see such a range. And, as I say, not that, a range that hasn't been reflected elsewhere. So here we are again with Kate Lavery, What Happens Next 2026, collage and pen drawing. Um, Nina says collage of medical notes and DWP application forms, coloured in pastel shades, overlaid with an ink drawing of a woman wearing a green t-shirt and blue trousers, sat on her bed surrounded by letters, water bottle, phone, and her cat asleep on her pillow. Her walking stick is leaning up against the bed, ready to use. So again, it's quite an active picture. And I'm just going to click on here and show you just the sheer level of detail here. I must say I do love collage, but I'm not a collage artist. And yes, I really admire these collages, however anybody's created them. So now we're moving on. I'm just going to have to move my Zoom thing around so that I can actually see what the title is. So this is Joe Farmer's Bed Life from 2025, and it's a digitally altered smartphone photograph. And it has become, because it's been digitally altered, it's become cartoon-like illustration of a pair of bare feet resting on a bed. The woman is wearing loose pattern trousers with floral or abstract designs in brown, beige, and hints of blue. The feet are positioned close together, toes pointing upwards. I think that's a beautiful example of how you can use filters to create digital images. And here is May Gauntlet, which perhaps looks quite similar, but in fact is made from creative markers. It's all in yellow from 2025. Nina says pencil drawn, although I don't think that's quite true if it's creative markers. Illustration of a woman in yellow check outfit wearing yellow star glasses. She stands against a yellow background facing the viewer with a pair of yellow crutches supporting her, and she has tattoos on her arms. I think what I love about this, and indeed so many others, is it's a celebration. This is about disabled joy. This is who we are. We certainly have a lot of barriers to face, and those are reflected in the pictures as well. But ultimately, this is such a celebration. And here's another one, Ruth Much's Purple Me from 2025. And this is a digital illustration using Procreate. It's a cartoon-like illustration of a woman sitting in a manual wheelchair. She's wearing blue tinted glasses, a purple outfit of shirt, trousers, and shoes, and her brown hair is tied back in a ponytail with a purple streak. She has a light-coloured cat sitting on her lap, and there are purple stars in the background. The wheelchair is detailed with purple on the frame and front caster wheels matching. So again, it's a very different self-portrait from the sort of very traditional self-portrait exhibitions. But I think, yeah, I think it just shows why we should have a bigger range more often. Now, this is Meg Hyland's We'll Never Know What Happened, which I think has echoes of things that lots of us have had similar things said to us. It's 2025, it's coloured ink, coloured pencil, ink, and Posca pen. I'm just going to bring this up bigger. And Nina says it's a cartoon illustration of a woman sitting in a manual wheelchair. Oh, sorry, reading the wrong one. Multicolored hand-drawn illustration of woman with dark red gloves touching the forehead and various symbolic elements around the face, including a fairground carousel, an eye shape, two laughing suns, and two green aliens with speech bubbles showing symbols and exclamation marks. Underneath the woman are the words, "We'll never know what happens." So I'm going to move down again. This is by Michelle Baharia, who many of you may know. She's a very prolific painter. It's called Window to My Secret Desert Life. So we'd all like to know more about that. It's a painting of a woman with long, bright pink hair and round, dark glasses on a balcony in a desert-like area with sand, mountains, and palm trees. I think this is probably a real place, but I think it's also very reflective of those kind of, if you like, mental kind of secret places that we go to in our imagination when everything's become too much. So thank you, Michelle, for submitting that. Next is one by our own chair, Julie Newman, and it's called Aralan Amor, and it's 2026 gouache and watercolor pencil. It's a picture of a mermaid sitting on a rock, looking out to sea. She's got long, goldy red hair, and the sea, it's like a bay. So you've got green hills, coast either side of it, and a sort of rocky shore. One of the reasons that I like this is that the mermaid is a very important figure, I think, to lots of disabled people. It's that sense of being able to, don't have to be able to walk, you can swim, or you can, or indeed you can fly. But I think the mermaid comes up very, very often. And also within the queer community, it has a lot of resonance. So it was really nice to have a mermaid in here. And then something completely different. Rivka Leareva is this is called True Happiness, and again it's 2026, and it's a portrait painted on a chopping board, which I thought was fantastic in itself, of a woman smiling. Behind her is a bright blue background, and she's wearing black rimmed glasses and a red shirt. I think the next time any of us think that we've run out of paper or canvas, we should remember this because it's just, I think it's such an imaginative thing to do. And indeed, so is this. So this is Agatha Noack containing memory 2024 slip on terracotta. I'm just going to show you some of the detail of this. So it's an expressive portrait of a woman's face in blue with pale yellow hair and blue eyes rendered onto terracotta with slip. Um, I can confidently say there's never been anything like that in any of the exhibitions of women's self-portraits before. Um, yeah, I think it's great, but it's so different. And I just love the range in this show. And indeed, so this is Karen Bucknell, and it's a photograph of a woman smiling, wearing a pink shirt and rainbow sash with the words classic and warrior visible on the sash. She holds up a stoma bag with a red heart on it and the words, I'm still Karen. I was so pleased to have this in the show because I think it just, it just expresses something that we all feel. If we've always been disabled, we know that we're just like everybody else. And if we've become disabled, we know we're the same person that we were before. We've just got added experience. So this is a real celebration by Karen, and Karen also does stand-up comedy. So I'm hoping that at some point we'll also see Karen at one of our performance events. So this next one, Kelly Knox's Solar Sigil. Not sure I pronounced that properly. Self-portrait 2025. This is a photograph of a woman in the sun, stood in front of a swimming pool in a turquoise bikini. Her right hand is held aloft to the sun, and her left arm ends just below her elbow. I think it's just a fabulous celebration. And again, that's what so many of these pictures forefront is that sense of joy. And it's in such a sharp contrast to the miserable lives we're supposed to lead. And again, in sharp contrast to the miserable lives we're supposed to lead. This is Tracy's piece, Have Wheels Will Roll from 2025. A woman with blonde hair wearing dark glasses, blue sweatshirt, and black trousers sits in a power chair in front of a blue van. She's holding a box containing miscellaneous objects. One of the things I really like about this is that this is showing somebody who's got things to do. She's busy, she's in her power chair, she's sitting outside a van that she's clearly, well, not necessarily about to get into, maybe she's just got out, but she's got a box on her lap that's full of things that she's actively going to go and do. I think, knowing Tracy, that possibly she was running off to lead a craft session for girls or something like that. But it's just very, have wheels, will roll. So again, it's a very different image of disabled women to the images that are presented to us. And so is this, which is Teddy's Rainbow in the Park, which is a flashback to 2020. It's a digital photo. A young woman with shoulder length hair wearing a green top and black trousers sits smiling in a wheelchair in a park. On the path in front of her is a rainbow that has been drawn in chalk. I think we all know that all of us had a difficult time, to put it mildly, in 2020. But what I like about this picture is it reminds us that there was still again times of joy, times of hope. The rainbow at the time was a very powerful symbol. I don't know whether Teddy drew that symbol, that's the impression that the portrait gives. But yes, I really like the kind of way that it forefronts the resilience that I think we all had, however bad things got. And so this next one is mine. It's called Adra, which just means at home. A woman wearing glasses, a hat, scarf, a navy blue jumper with a star on it, and blue trousers sits on a mobility vehicle with chopper style handlebars in front of a background of a sunset. This is actually me in front of my workshop. So the background, the sort of orange that you can see here, is a picture of a sunset from the sky opposite that I've sort of imposed behind what's really a very white, boring kind of white plastic kind of doors to the workshop, and you can just see the doors coming through here. I made this after I did my workshop, I think at the end of January, for the Reflecting Ourselves exhibition. And I hadn't looked at most of those pictures for a very long time. So some of these things I sort of consciously took in from the self-portraits that I talked about. So this stick was in my very first self-portrait series back in 1997. And this idea of cutting out against the background was very reminiscent of Perception 1 to 4, the Lightbox series that I talked about. But what I realized later was that it was really responding to a self-portrait that I didn't discuss in the workshop, which was one called Housebound. And I made it for a project by the late David Morris, who inspired Together. And it was me sitting in my manual wheelchair, sort of aging rocker in my late 40s, holding, my wrists were tied with fragile tape to the bars of the security gate, and I was basically caged in the house. And I thought I think I'm in a very different place. So I wanted to show something where the orange that was on my, in Housebound, I have a sort of bright orange vest on. I wanted to sort of reflect the orange behind that the color was part of the workshop. It was this space of, home is now a space of creativity. So that's a little bit more extra explanation of that one. And then this is Arlene Jackson on the Wing 2025 digital photograph. And it's a photograph of, you can just see part of the mobility vehicle on a dirt track in a wooded area with sunlight filtering through the trees to create dappled shade. And in the mirror, we see a woman reflected wearing dark glasses as she holds up her phone to take a selfie. And of course, you can see it also refers back to, I think it's Annalise oil painting is, has that same image of the mirror. And here we start to see some more mirrors, again, coming back to that reflecting ourselves. This is Zena Shoon's Disabled Joy from 2019. It's a digital photograph. And I think the title and the photograph says it all. Again, it's that sense of, we won't be held back by your sort of negative images of us. We will have very hard times as disabled women, but ultimately we will also find joy. And here is another image of a woman being reflected in a mirror. This is our own Pippa Marshall, and it's a still life photograph of a box of colouring pencils and a journal, on which sits a pot of coloured pencils and a mirror. And in the mirror, we see the reflection of a woman with brown hair wearing glasses. I thought this was a very, very clever take on the traditional kind of still life picture, or the very kind of, I suppose, going back hundreds of years, the pictures of the first women artists, if they did self-portraits, and they'd be sitting at their easel holding the tools of their craft. So you have all of the tools of the craft there, and you still have, and you have Pippa, but it's not in a conventional, it's the composition just isn't conventional at all. So, congratulations, Pippa. And here is another image with a mirror. It's by E.J. Core. It's a photograph of a woman holding a purple walking stick and wearing a red top and purple trousers with a red bag and shoes, taking a selfie in front of an antique mirror in a room full of works of art with antique craft furniture on rustic wooden floorboards. And as you can see, the artist is still very tiny, as with so many of these, actually, the artist has been rendered very small within the picture. And it's called Briefly Made Visible 2026. And again, that really reflects the theme of the exhibition, because that reflecting ourselves is very much about, we have to make our own images because the other images of us are either distorted or largely invisible. Now, this is a brand new self-portrait by our very own Nancy Willis, Living in Colour. It's a digital photograph with thanks to Ilse Colesell and to Lula Noor. I would have loved to have had Nancy with me tonight, but unfortunately, I'm hoping she's listening in, but it's really, yeah, it's too late to meet, obviously, quite a few people's access needs. It's just a stunning, stunning picture, which I'm quite sure, like Nancy's other self-portraits, will end up in a major museum. Um, Nina says, photograph of a woman sitting in a richly decorated, colourful interior. She's sitting upright in a power chair, facing the camera with a calm, composed expression. She has short grey hair and is wearing glasses and a bright red headband. Her outfit is vibrant and layered, a pink dress or skirt with a yellow lower section, a black top, and a coral pink crocheted vest. She is accessorized with multiple necklets and bracelets. The room around her is filled with art and decorative objects. Behind her is a fireplace mantle adorned with small objects and textiles. On the wall above the mantle is a bright painting featuring a person riding on an elephant, which is actually one of Nancy's self-portraits. To the left, there is another painting of a seated figure reading a book, and above that hangs a decorative lampshade with patterned fabric and fringe. A cross is mounted on the wall near the centre. To the right, there is a framed painting with deep blue tones showing a figure holding a child. Plants and decorative items are placed around her. There's a leafy green plant near the fireplace and flowers arranged in a yellow jug on the corner. And I'd just like to say a huge thank you again to Nancy for supporting this exhibition. She's been a role model to so many of us over the years. And I think her workshop really helped inspire quite a number of the new works that are in this show. So, moving on, this is Luminara Florescu's self-care scarf. I need a rosy day pink, and it's from 2023. It's a digital photograph. Um, it's a photograph of a person wearing a very chunky, bright pink knitted scarf or jumper covering their entire head and face. Below it, they're wearing a denim jacket with oversized badges on and a brown and white spotted shirt. I don't know quite what to say about this apart from the fact that I think it's fabulous and I think it's even, and so interesting because it shows the individual so much and yet doesn't show the face. This is another self-portrait that, in this case, really forefronts textiles. It's Kelly Ann Horsburgh's Kelly All Stitched Up and Feeling Blue from 2023, and it's free motion machine embroidery. Um, and it's a stitched portrait of a woman's face with pale blue and multicolored shoulder length hair and blue eyes and a green t-shirt on a deep blue background. I think this is so interesting where it takes that much more conventional self-portrait and completely changes it by using embroidery, which is something that's still today not respected in the way that it should be because it's always been seen as a woman's work. Is it art? Is it craft? I think the embroidery pieces that we have here tonight, apart from the fact we don't care what other people think, show that embroidery is very much a fine art. So I'm going to come on to another embroidered piece, which is Kate Rollison's Where Does a Woman Write from 2026. It's hand embroidery on a doily. And it's two statements. One says, I embroidered in the forest in green thread in the shape of a leaf. And the other says, Now I will write on the shore in gold thread in the shape of a wave. And Kate is our youth leader, as well as being a fine artist in her own right. So if you're under the age of 25 and you're interested in working with Kate, please do let us know. Now, this is Maggie Gola, and it's called My Perfect Self Image from 2019, and it's a digitally enhanced photograph. And I was saying to Maggie Gola only the other day that one of the reasons I really liked, she has a lot of self-portraits, but I really appreciated this one because it's that sense of feeling that we need to use filters and the sort of, I think it really expresses some of the pressures, but yeah, it's not a pressured photograph. It's a very joyful photograph. It's called My Perfect Self-Image. And it's a mirrored and blurred filtered digital photograph of a woman smiling, wearing a black top with an ornate mirrored print on the wall behind her. Now, this is a wonderful photograph. It's a monochrome and sepia collage with the left panel has a black and white side profile of a woman overlaid with angular shard-like lines. The center panel is a sepia tinted photograph of a woman lit through window blinds, creating striped shadows across their face. And to the right, there's a silhouetted head filled with geometric cutouts and radiating lines. I'm just going to give you a quick opportunity to see this more close up. I don't know how it was displayed originally, but I think it works incredibly well here as a digital image too. And word of warning, here is some nudity. So this is Layla Glantz's self-portrait. I think it's from 2005, and it's from a whole series that Layla did. Layla is another member of the Together 2012 team. I don't know as much about it as I should do, and in fact, it was the 50th entry, so we don't have official audio description. But Layla is lying naked on the floor in an abandoned space. It looks quite Victorian and institutional. It's got high ceilings, it's got high windows, and all of the paint is peeling away from the ceiling and the walls and falling on the floor. And I think, in a sort of horrible way, it's also got that sort of sense of skin coming off. And then this is Gail Chassery's Crypt Crib, which is a photograph of a mini installation from 2024. And again, I'm just going to click on that so you can see the full glory. It's a small scale room scene featuring a skeleton sitting in bed using a laptop, knitting materials, balls of wool, needles, fabric, a calendar with a sheep on, a wall clock labelled crypt time, and other domestic details such as blankets, shelves, plant, and a phone hot water bottle. And I think crypt time is one of the key things about this image. Now, this is Sandra Kerr Gordon's Resilient, which is it looks like an egg cracked down its center and delicately stitched together with black thread against a white background. But in fact, it's porcelain. I just think it's such an interesting abstract, but such a clear way to create a self-portrait. This is Louise Golder's Masking from 2024. It's Indian ink, charcoal, and chalk. I'm just going to click on this again. So I think that makes it easier to see where you have the eyes looking through. It's an ink and charcoal drawing featuring a large area of seemingly spilt ink resembling a bird. And in amongst this, a pair of eyes look out. I think that's the best representation of masking that I have ever seen. And then finally, we have Diane Elizabeth Casey. It's a photograph of a printed poem with redactions. Thick black ink obscures everything else on the page, leaving only the phrases visible. No lesson, no redemption arc, just breathe. Still uneven, still here. And it's that's the end of the exhibition because I think it just sums up everything that we wanted to say. We are still here. You know, we face our challenges. We're not pretending that we don't. Life can be very difficult for us, but we all have moments of joy, even if sometimes we can forget about them. And we're still here. You know, we're strong women. You know, if nobody else is going to feature us in International Women's Month, it doesn't matter. We're reflecting ourselves. So I'm just going to go back and start reading some of the points that have come into the chat. Oh, and I'm very pleased to see that yeah, I'm very pleased to see that people have been putting their social media into the chat as well. Kelly says, honoured to be part of this with every one of you, incredible disabled women. Um, Julie says it's a very striking show and she likes the colours very much. And Margaret says, me too. Um, some of these things I think it's difficult because people are talking about this one really spoke to me, but I can't, hopefully you saw it at the time. What happens if you're sharing a screen and running the meeting is you can't actually see the chat at the time. Otherwise, I would have come back to some of these then. Anne T says, I love Deborah Coldfield's, it's brilliant. Um, Diane Casey says it's an honor to be part of this exhibition with so many incredible women. And Diane's actually on Instagram as Northern Matriarch, which I really do like. Um, Meg says, love seeing the whole exhibition, so many wonderful pieces. Caroline explains further, I'm an exhibiting artist. My image is not only of myself, but some of the women who support me. I can't exist without these women, so my piece is called Self Needs Support. It's inspired by Van Dyck's Pembroke family portrait. Thank you so much for sharing that, Caroline. We would have included artist statements, but we didn't for two reasons. And the first is that's actually quite an inaccessible thing to ask a lot of artists to produce. And the second was we couldn't find a way to program it easily for people to read. Deborah Caulfield says so many really strong images in this exhibition. Going back to Ellie's, Meg says really nice expression, and Julie says this is timeless. Meg says Cherry's piece is very powerful. Julie says Barbara has caught the essence of heartbreak and fantastic images from Cherry. Kate says I love the combination of sculptures. Um, Julie says multiple images are so powerful. I hope that everybody has got is enthused to produce more self-portraits. I think those, Nancy has a lot of self-portraits within her practice, and I hope this has inspired you to think about perhaps you doing something different to what you've already done. Julie was just commenting on Renee's collage. Love this, Renee. Really tells the story. Um, Jemima's piece, Meg says, I love Jemima's piece, very fun to look through. And Julie says Jemima has captured her journey beautifully. Ah, now this is a great explanation from Linda. My portrait is expressing the feeling I have of being subsumed into the green bedding of my bed after decades of having to live here for about 22 hours, lie here for about 22 hours of every day. And my Instagram is underscore Antara art underscore. Yes, and that's the piece called Subsumation. Um, lots of lots of comebacks on the collage. Meg says Kate Lavery's is one of my favourites. The DWP letters pasted in here were particularly hard hitting. And Julie says this is so interesting, very relatable. Renee says this is such a powerful collection of artworks. Thank you for bringing us all together to exhibit and to share this celebration tonight. Um, I think this one is Joe Farmer. So Julie says Joe Farmer has captured the view in bed so well. Um, Kate says, I'm not sure which Kate, but I think this might be Kate Lavery again. I got back into making comics last year through a project with Alzheimer's Research UK and love it as a storytelling medium. That definitely influenced my piece. My Insta is at Eclectic Creative Kate, which is a great one. We actually do quite a lot of comics-based work with our youth program. If anybody's under 25 or knows under 25s who might be interested. And I'm just because we're 5 minutes, so I'm just skidding through for a minute to make sure that I've at least seen everybody's. Um, And Caroline points out, of course, that it's not just me that can't exist without support from others. I would maintain, of course, that nobody can exist without support from others. And I think it's one of those things about, oh, I'm not a disabled person, I don't need any support. But of course, that's completely untrue. Linda says this was my first self-portrait ever, and I'm really inspired seeing all of the incredible work exhibited here to do more. I feel honoured to be a part of this with you all. Well, I feel incredibly honoured to being able to put it together. Agatha said, I loved being part of the show. Thank you very much. It was so interesting to see so many interpretations of self. Congratulations to all. Pippa says, thank you for the brilliant tour. It's wonderful to be part of this exhibition. And Diane says, I'm so thankful for being part of the exhibition, especially having my work sitting alongside so many artists. And Jemima says this is really interesting and inspiring. I love that. Margaret says stunning images, beautiful creativity, strong exhibition, proud to be part of it. Julie says this is such an inspiring exhibition. I have loved every word, every image. Meg says, what a fantastic group of pieces. I love the range from colourful joy to grim pain and everything in between. Carolyn says, amazing and beautifully moving exhibition. I'm very pleased to say that, as with everything we do, we will be archiving this online after the month. So other disabled women in the future will also be able to find it and be inspired by it. And I'm sure they will be. So, so as it's approaching 8 o'clock, I would just have time to say some thank yous. So, thank you to our British Sign Language interpreter, Chris Burrow, to our captioner, Norma McKay from Global Real Time Captioning, to everyone from the Together 2012 team who's been working behind the scenes tonight, to Arts Council England for funding it, to all of our artists, and to everyone else who's been here tonight to celebrate reflecting ourselves. And it would finally, it would be very helpful for our future funding if you can complete the very short survey. It takes 2 minutes, according to SurveyMonkey, that will appear automatically when I close the event. I've just got time to read a few more messages. So Margaret says, oh, thank you, Jew and Together team, all the artists and everyone who supports us all. Charmaine says, thanks so much, fabulous. Dee Fry says, thank you. I'm so grateful and very honoured to be part of this celebration featuring so many incredible disabled artists. And Diane is at Stim underline music. Deborah Caulfield says it's one of those rare occasions where the word inspirational is completely apt. And Meg says, thanks everybody. It was so fun and inspiring to be part of this. And I'm definitely inspired to do more self-portraits now. So it just remains for me to say, keep reflecting yourselves. And also, not everybody can produce a self-portrait. Let's think about doing portraits of other women as well. Let's really get many more images of disabled women out there in this glorious range and in all of our variety. So I'd just like to say a very good evening to you all, and thank you again for coming.